All right, we're in Genesis chapters 17 and 18. The first question reads, what were the new names given to Abram and Sarai based on? I'm going to start in verse 5 of chapter 17. God says to Abram, no longer will you be called Abram. Your name will be Abraham, for I have made you a father of many nations. Verse 6, I will make you very fruitful. I will make nations of you, and kings will come from you. And he continues with more promises. This name of Abraham was in harmony with this promise of God to make him very fruitful and that nations would come from him. Going down to verse 15, God also said to Abraham, as for Sarai, your wife, you are no longer to call her Sarai. Her name will be Sarah. Verse 16, I will bless her and will surely give you a son by her. I will bless her so that she will be the mother of nations. Kings of peoples will come from her. The names were based on the promises that God had given to Abraham now many years ago, but now he's renewing these promises now 13 years after the birth of Ishmael. And he's telling him, I am going to make a great nation out of you, and here explicitly out of Sarah, your wife. So the acceptance of these names, this is going into the next question, and the usage of these names would have been an explicit declaration of faith in this impossibility, that God was going to bless the womb of this menopausal 90-year-old woman and was going to bless the body of this 100-year-old man to be able to conceive and bear a child in their old age. And so every time they would say Abraham and not Abram, or Sarah and not Sarai, they were acknowledging that they believe, or I should say they were professing that they believed these promises of God. I'm sure it was a kind of awkward conversation after this dream when God revealed this to Abram to come and say, oh, don't call me Abram anymore, call me Abraham. But he would have to tell the whole clan, my name is no longer Abram, my name is Abraham. Why? Because God has given these promises, and I believe that God, even in my old age, is going to fulfill these promises. And the same for Sarai, and that's who we're focusing on for the next questions. She also, when using the name Abraham, when answering to the name Sarah, she would be acknowledging, or professing at least, to believe the promises of God that she in her old age would still have a child. The next question then, a part of that, is how did she respond within herself or to herself when the visitor in chapter 18 repeated this promise that she was professing to believe? Going into Genesis chapter 18, in verse 12, it says, so Sarah laughed to herself as she thought, after I am worn out and my master is old, will I now have this pleasure? And so in response to this thing that she had been professing to believe by answering to the name, by using Abraham's new name, she laughs, signifying doubt, signifying disbelief, thinking it not just doubtful, but even laughable, thinking that it's ridiculous to believe this. But she had been professing to believe it by the names. The next question then, was God impressed by her faithful external profession? Well, going to the response here, in verse 13, then the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh and say, will I really have a child now that I am old? Verse 14, is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son. No, God was not impressed by the fact that she had adopted the new names and that she had been using and answering to them. God was concerned with what was going on inside. In your heart, Sarah, do you believe that with God all things are possible? Regardless of what you're doing outside, regardless of what you're saying outside, and this is where God puts his emphasis. This goes to the next question. Can you think of any stories of Jesus doing something similar to what the Lord did to Sarah in response? Yes, what he does here is expose to her, and in this case to others, her heart. We find Jesus doing this actually on many occasions. The Pharisees and the Sadducees, the rulers of the Jews, would be thinking in their hearts, who is this man that forgives sinners? And it says Jesus, knowing their hearts, responded. He wasn't just concerned with the fact that externally they may have been saying one thing, but he wanted to know what's going on in the heart, and he addressed it publicly, just like he did here with Sarah. Another case is with Simon the leper. In Luke chapter 7 is an account of Simon the leper he was actually a Pharisee, invited Jesus to his house. He has this feast, invites many people. This is a nice external expression of faith in Jesus and of admiration and respect for Jesus. But then when Mary comes and washes Jesus' feet, he says in his heart, in Luke 7, he says in his heart, this man, if he were a prophet, would have known who and what manner of woman this is that was washing his feet. In his heart, despite his external profession, he was doubting if Jesus were even a prophet. What does Jesus do? Jesus answers and says, Simon, I have something to say to you. And he goes and addresses the thought of his heart. This and the many other experiences of the Old and New Testament show us that the focus of God, the focus of Jesus, is on our heart. He's not impressed nor distracted by the things we may do externally, not distracted by the things we may say externally. His focus is on our heart. I'm going to focus on just two areas where we're tempted to do this, and this is how this can apply to us. One area I know that I find difficult to keep my heart in harmony with my external profession is in prayer. We pray sometimes as Christians by habit. We know when we're supposed to pray. We pray before we eat. We pray when we wake up, pray when we go to bed. But sometimes I find that my prayer life is just a profession. Sometimes the things I say in prayer are different from what I honestly believe in my heart. This is similar to Sarah, making a good profession externally, but in my heart, I'm far from believing these things that I say. What should I do about this? Should I stop praying? No, Sarah shouldn't have stopped using the name, shouldn't have stopped answering to the name. That wasn't the solution. The solution was to work with God. He gave her an opportunity here. Work with God on her heart. But what a better ending to the story it would have been if, instead of denying that she laughed, Sarah had said, you're right, I did laugh. I don't believe the things that I've been saying by my words. I don't believe the things that I've been professing by my actions. In my heart, I doubt the power of God to fulfill his promise. What if that was the end of the story? You remember the man in Mark chapter 9, verse 24. He says, this is the New International Version. I really like this translation on this verse. It says, I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief. Help me overcome my unbelief. You see, when Jesus is speaking to our hearts, when Jesus is exposing our hearts like he does here with Sarah, he's not doing it just to make us feel bad, not to make us look bad. He's doing it so that we have an opportunity. It's really in his mercy that he's doing it. He does it so we have an opportunity to see for ourselves our need and then come to him. And what does it say? Help me overcome my unbelief. Help my heart come into harmony with what I'm professing. Help my belief in my heart come into harmony with what I'm saying externally. Another place I've seen this play out in my life is in worship, in the corporate worship, in church attendance. Every week I dress up, I go to a place of worship, I sing songs, I pray in the presence of God, I join with his people in worshiping him. And in doing so, I'm professing that I believe that God is great. I believe that God is all powerful, that God is on high. I believe that I ought to be bowed low in his presence because in comparison to him, I am nothing. And all of my help and all of my hope is in him. In coming to worship, in worshiping, these are the things that I'm professing. But again, the question comes, is that what I believe in my heart? Is that what I believe in my heart? Because, of course, if I believe that in my heart, it would show itself not just in dressing up and coming every week to worship service, but it would show itself in acknowledging in him in all my ways, in trusting his ways. If I say that he's better than me, he knows all, his ways are higher, his ways are better, then I would follow his ways. I would seek him for help to change me to walk in his ways. Bringing the profession of my actions, the profession of my words into harmony with what is really going on in my heart. I believe this is the message here that Sarah shows us, that even though she may have been professing it with her mouth, what does she believe in her heart? And may God help us all to bridge that gap between what we profess and what we believe.